Shutter Island is usually described as a mystery, a psychological thriller, a film with a twist that redefines everything that came before it. But that description misses something essential, because by the time the truth is revealed, the mystery is already over. What remains is not confusion, but a choice. Shutter Island isn't about discovering reality. It's about deciding whether reality is survivable. And that question is far more unsettling than any twist. On the surface, the story follows Teddy Daniels, a U.S. Marshal sent to investigate a missing patient at a psychiatric hospital. The island is hostile. The weather is violent. The staff are evasive. From the beginning, nothing feels stable. As Teddy moves through the institution, he begins to sense that the official story doesn't add up. Records are incomplete. Answers are delayed. Patients speak in riddles, and slowly, suspicion turns into certainty. There must be something hidden here. Some experiment. Some conspiracy. The film encourages us to adopt Teddy's perspective completely. We share his frustration. We share his paranoia. But this alignment is deliberate, because the investigation itself is not real. It is a psychological refuge. There's a reason the film works so well on first viewing. Teddy's paranoia doesn't feel irrational. It feels justified. We live inside his suspicion because we recognize it. The sense that something is wrong, but unnamed. The feeling that the official explanation is too neat. Shutter Island understands something fundamental about the human mind. We trust narratives where suffering has meaning. We believe stories where pain is the result of injustice, because those stories preserve dignity. Teddy's investigation gives his trauma direction. His grief becomes a mission. His anger becomes purpose. And purpose is easier to live with than responsibility. By the final act, the truth is revealed. Teddy Daniels is not a marshal. He is Andrew Laeddis, a patient, a man who murdered his wife after she drowned their children. The conspiracy never existed. The investigation was a constructed narrative. But this revelation is often misunderstood. The hospital is not trying to trick Andrew. They already know the truth. Andrew knows it too. What he lacks is the ability to live with it. That distinction matters, because Shutter Island is not about deception. It's about containment. The fantasy exists not to obscure reality, but to soften it. Andrew doesn't randomly invent a new identity. He becomes a hero, a lawman, a rescuer, a man pursuing justice rather than haunted by guilt. This is not coincidence. His delusion transforms him from perpetrator into protector. The fire that killed his wife becomes the crime of another man. His failure to save his children becomes an external tragedy. Every unbearable element of reality is displaced, not erased, relocated. This is how the mind survives extreme guilt. It doesn't deny facts. It reframes responsibility. Andrew's delusion is not confusion. It's precision. This is where Shutter Island becomes morally unsettling. Because Andrew's delusion doesn't erase responsibility. It suspends it. The film asks whether a person is still morally accountable if acknowledging guilt would destroy them completely. This is not a question with a clean answer. Andrew cannot undo what he's done, but he also cannot survive knowing it. And so the mind negotiates. It creates a version of reality where existence is still possible. Not meaningful, not peaceful, just possible. Shutter Island refuses to tell us whether this is right. It only shows us that the alternative is psychological death. Shutter Island presents denial in an unusual way, not as cowardice, not as immaturity, but as mercy. Andrew's mind reaches a point where guilt no longer motivates change. It threatens annihilation. And when the psyche faces annihilation, it adapts. It creates a story where survival is possible. This is uncomfortable because it suggests something most narratives avoid. That truth is not always healing. Sometimes truth destroys. And when destruction becomes inevitable, the mind chooses fiction. Not because fiction is comforting, but because it allows existence to continue. Shutter Island itself mirrors Andrew's internal state. It is isolated, storm-battered, impossible to escape. Every attempt to leave fails. Boats are delayed. Gates are locked. Paths loop back on themselves. The island is not a prison. It is a mind that cannot move forward. The guards, the cliffs, the lighthouse, they represent the limits of denial. No matter how elaborate the fantasy becomes, it always ends in the same place. The truth waits. The doctors on Shutter Island are often seen as manipulators, but their role is far more ambiguous. They don't create Andrew's fantasy. They enter it. They allow him to live inside it one final time. Not to reinforce the lie, but to test whether the truth can be endured. This is why the roleplay is so elaborate, why it unfolds slowly, why no one forces the revelation. Andrew must arrive at the truth willingly, because forced clarity would only create another delusion. The doctors are not chasing recovery. They are asking a quieter question. Is there a version of reality this man can live with? When Andrew finally reaches the lighthouse, something unexpected happens. There is no horror, no chaos, no violence. There is calm. He is told the truth, plainly, gently, without force. And for a moment, clarity is possible. The storm ends. The confusion fades. The fantasy dissolves. But clarity does not save him. It only presents a final decision. In the final scene, Andrew appears to relapse. He speaks as Teddy again. He asks about the investigation. At first, this looks like failure, but then he asks a question. Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? This line reframes the entire film. Andrew is not confused. He is choosing. He understands the truth. He understands the guilt. And he decides that existence, burdened by that truth, is worse than non-existence. The lobotomy is not punishment. It is consent. Notice how Shutter Island ends. There is no music swelling, no dramatic confirmation, no moral judgment, just silence. The film doesn't tell us how to feel, because the answer depends on something deeply personal. Whether you believe survival is more important than truth, or whether truth matters, even when it destroys us. Shutter Island was never about uncovering a mystery. It was about understanding why the mind lies, not out of weakness, but out of mercy. The film asks a question most stories refuse to ask. Is truth always the most humane option? And sometimes, quietly, disturbingly, the answer is no.